I'm going to show you how you can cover up dark spots, blemishes, even hyperpigmentation. This is going to work for anything which you feel is kind of a bit of a nuisance on your face. So currently, you're quite lucky because this fits in really well with my skin at the moment. I have broken out with a whole load of hormonal acne, and it's currently kind of like in the dried up phase. So it's gone past the angry, infuriated stage of being red and inflamed, but now it's kind of dry. So there's nothing waiting to come out basically. And now it's like dried down and I've got these awful black spots. Like, it's so annoying because when you get normal spots, you know, when you have a normal breakdown, it's kind of red. Like I have one here, it's kind of red. And maybe it will go into a bit of a blemish, but you know, when you deal with certain angry spots like this, I don't know what happens, but it decides it wants to be a completely different color to your skin. So now it's just like two really dark patches like there, blemishes. Some here, a little bit red still on this side, but it's not inflamed like it was. Oh God, it's awful. Like what a horrible place to break out just like on your neck. I'd rather it be on my face, to be honest with you. Just leave this area nice and clear. I want to show you how you can cover this up. And I've already got my skincare on, but what I do want to do is apply a primer. Now, a primer is going to really help to obviously prep the skin. Secondly, it's going to help to create a barrier between your skincare and your makeup so that you're not kind of like aggravating the area anymore with any kind of makeup, because even though makeup these days claims to have a lot of skincare ingredients in them, I still like to keep that little barrier in between to just kind of like separate the two. So your skincare needs to be whatever you are used to using. Make sure it is nice and hydrating, but at the same time not overly oily or greasy. You don't want to, again, block up any pores. Now we're going to use the Laura Mercier Pure Canvas Primer, the blurring one. This is going to be really good to just, I'm just patting it on and smoothing it over. This is going to be really good. I'm going to put this on other areas as well. I keep saying that this is going to be really good and then I just change topic. So it's going to be really good for just smoothing the area out, and also just gives you a better kind of finish for your makeup to sit on. So it's just giving you a bit of a helping hand. Now, what tends to happen is when you get the spot, it's initially inflamed, right? You've got the spot there, there's stuff in it, it needs to come out. That stage, you want to let that run its course. When it gets to the point where that spot is now kind of dried up, there's nothing waiting to come out, it's kind of a little bit crusty and scabby, sorry, but that's just the reality of it. That's when you want to think about dermaplaning. You don't want to do it in the middle of this process that I'm doing, because I actually did mine yesterday, but I would say do dermaplaning, and what that's doing is that's scraping off the top dead layer of skin, leaving you with a smoother finish. Then I would do it again roughly around a week later. So I'd say about maybe every 10 days, do dermaplaning, because once you do it and then you leave it, you want to wait 24 hours before you put makeup on, by the way. Don't put makeup on immediately after dermaplaning. But once you do it, over the course of the next 10 days, your skin will start building up because it's repairing itself, right? So it's going to start building up and it may get crusty again and you want to do it again. So eventually the darkness will go and you'll be left with your nice clean skin. But in the meantime, I would suggest doing that in the background. Now that we've got the primer on, we want to focus on letting this settle down, which I think it kind of has done so far because I've been talking a bit, but you want to really make sure that you leave a gap between each application. So important to do this, because if it stays fluid and then you go straight in to your next step and it's kind of like everything's moving around, nothing's going to settle. So you want to make sure that you let it settle down and kind of like just, it will mat down a little bit before you move on to the next step. That's very important through this whole process. Now, the next step is something which I'm not sure if any of you guys know about, but it's something that I personally feel works really well with dark spots and even hyperpigmentation, dark blemishes. I like to use a color corrector next. Now, if you guys know a bit about color correcting, you know that you use a kind of orange shade on very like tanned or deep skin tones to cover up dark circles, and more of a peachy tone on fairer skin tones to cover up dark circles. Now, I'm going to be using that orange color corrector. Now, if you think about it in the same way, that orange color corrector is neutralizing the darkness for the under eye circles, right? We're going to be doing the same with dark spots, because ultimately the dark spots are a similar color to that dark circle area. So what we want to do is kind of pinpoint the application of the color corrector so that we're kind of brightening it up underneath before we go in with the concealer. Have you ever, and I would say majority of you are going to say yes to this, have you ever dealt with dark spots and pigmentation and you go straight in with your concealer, like your fluid tube concealer, and you use a sponge and nothing seems to cover it up. Well, that's what is going wrong here. You're using the wrong type of texture and you're using the wrong kind of layers. You're layering it up wrong and your technique is wrong. That's why everything is so important in this video. Your technique, how long you wait in between each step, the products you use as well, like the textures that you're using. So we're going to be sticking to all opaque textures here. So this color corrector is the Charlotte Tilbury Magic Vanish in number 3, which is tan, and it's a very opaque color corrector. We're not using anything liquidy. Liquidy is not really a word, but anything liquid based on our skin. So what I want to do is get a very fine brush. I'm going to use my REPHR 03 brush. It's a very small, fine pencil fluff brush. It's not really fluffy, but it's very condensed. So what I want to do here, because we've left enough time now, I want to go into this color corrector here. And then I want to just pat this on the areas which are very dark. And I'm gonna have to get a mirror here because I need to see close up. Wow, every time I look close up, I'm like, what is going on with my skin? There you go. And anywhere else you feel you've got it, I think that's the only place else that I've got it. For me, it's mainly on my jawline. Now, the trick is to let that settle down. You don't want to apply lots. As you can probably see, I've just applied a very small amount on the area. You can see it's kind of orange now, but that's fine. It's similar way of application when you do your under eyes, your dark circles. So we're going to let that settle down for a minute. Now, while that's settling down, we do want to actually bring you even better content on this channel. So it would really help us out. I know you probably hear a load of people saying it, but if you actually do hit the like button and maybe even think about sharing this video, it really does do us a huge favor. It helps us to grow this channel a little bit more. And it's pretty crazy because I've seen on my kind of stats that I have a look on the channel that so many of you guys watch it, but so many of you are not actually subscribed. If you would subscribe to this channel, it would mean the world to me. It would really be so awesome because then I feel like we're building the community even more. And don't forget, if you hit that bell button, it means that you won't miss any of our future videos. So just a quick FYI, would really appreciate it. Okay, so now that we've kind of like let that settle down, let's move on to the next step, which is applying a concealer, but we're applying it in a very strategic way and we're using a very specific finish texture. So I'm going to be using my KEVYN AUCOIN Sensual Skin Enhancer. Now this is a kind of like, I would say, concealer and foundation in one. It's pretty intense coverage, but also how you prep your skin will give you a better, like, kind of, will give you better control in what finish you get. Like, you can still make this look very natural depending on how you apply your skincare and skin prep underneath. But we're only focusing on the areas that we need to cover. This is not for the whole face. So I'm going to be using this because it's a pretty good kind of opaque concealer, but it isn't overly opaque. I feel like my skin is a little bit dry at the moment, and those areas are still a little bit dry, even though I have dermaplaned yesterday. So I don't want to apply something which is so heavily opaque that it's going to actually enhance the dryness in it. I do want to apply something which is kind of in between opaque and very slightly creamy, which is what this concealer, foundation, whatever you want to call it, is. The shade I'm using is SX11. Now, another concealer that I have used to do this before is my NARS Soft Matte Complete Concealer. This in ginger, by the way. This is a very, very opaque concealer. So this is great if you're not dealing with overly dry, kind of like dark spots. So that's another option for you. But I'm going for the KEVYN AUCOIN just because I do feel that my skin is a little bit still dry. So this is a little bit more creamy, but still opaque. Now I'm going to go ahead and use that same brush. You want to make sure there's none of that color corrector on it. So just wipe it off on a tissue. And then we're going to go in to this concealer. And we are going to actually just dab it on the back of the hand to make sure there's not a crazy amount on the brush. And we want to paint over now. So this is where you're going to see it start to cover up, but it's not going to be fully blended in. And I'll explain why. So we're just going to pat on top. So you'll actually see it looks a little bit kind of whiter. We've gone the other way now, so it's not dark now, but now it is going to be a little bit brighter than the skin. There you go. Again, don't worry about blending it in. That isn't what we're trying to do right now. So I'm just going to apply this everywhere where I can see. Okay, so we've applied it there. We're going to let that settle again. Again, all about letting it set before you move on to the next step. One thing I would say is when you are trying to cover up dark patches, and hyperpigmentation, dark spots, whatever, blemishes, try not to use liquid concealers because you're going to find it really difficult to actually cover it up. You want to use more of an opaque finish. Even if you have, for example, quite dry skin, you can adjust the texture slightly, like I have by using the KEVYN AUCOIN, because it's opaque, but it still has a slight creamy finish to it, but it's not fully liquid. But also don't forget that doesn't mean you use it all over your face. You're only using it on the areas that you need to cover up. Everywhere else you do as normal. Now, a question that I think you might have is, if you're doing this, how do you go about kind of like making sure that you don't disturb it with other makeup? Well, you really want to focus on not going over those areas with anything which requires a lot of kind of buffing or blending into the skin. I would recommend actually doing that underneath before you actually go ahead and do this, what we've just done, just so that you're not actually taking everything off that we've just done. This should have settled down by now. Now what we're gonna do is get a beauty blender, but this beauty blender is dry, it is not damp. Now what we're gonna do is just bounce this over. There's nothing on this. I'm very lightly bouncing it over. There you go. And what that's done now is help to kind of like get rid of the excess that's sitting around it, and it's kind of let everything settle down and kind of just looks a little bit more kind of like part of the skin now. I can go in with a foundation. So this is where I want to get a foundation which is not so heavy, because obviously the heavy part I wanted was to just cover those dark circles, but everywhere else I kind of want a natural finish. So this is where you can use a light to medium finish foundation. I'm using my Huda Beauty Easy Blur Natural Airbrush foundation in Macchiato 400G. I'm gonna get my sponge, same sponge I used. Doesn't matter if it's dry, it's fine. I'm just gonna do this bottom part because I just want you to see how you would actually kind of apply foundation on top. Try and avoid using a brush, because all that's gonna do, it's gonna be too harsh and it's actually gonna get rid of everything that you've just done. So what we wanna do is just pat this over the skin. Get your nice even finish. Can you see I'm actually focusing on applying it everywhere other than the area that we've been working on first, because I want to get that nice kind of like even veil all over the face, so that when I get to the areas that we've been covering with concealer, well, firstly, it gives it time to settle down, the dark spots, but also this will give me an idea of how much that I can, you know, get away with applying over those dark spots. So now, very lightly go over. Very lightly, don't keep trying to cover it with more foundation. The point of this step right now is that we get a veil of color all over, and the areas that we've applied the concealer where they're dark spots, it doesn't look so disconnected to the rest of the face. So there you go. That is done. So now that we've kind of got the foundation everywhere, what I do want to do is just set this. But again, same thing as earlier, you want to basically let this settle down before you actually go in with your powder, because otherwise what you're doing is just moving everything around. Every layer needs to be dried out almost. So we've left it a little bit of time. Now what I want to do is focus on setting this. So I've got my powder and I've basically got my Huda Beauty Easy Bake in banana bread. You can go for any kind of like powder that you want. It's up to you, as long as it's not anything which is kind of too chunky, because it's just going to make the area look kind of cakey. Now you have two options for this. You can press it on with a powder puff like I usually do with my base, or you can use a brush. I'm going to show you both just because I want you to know how to do both. I'm not bothering with concealer on the under eyes because that's not my main focus today. I really just want to show you how to cover up the dark spots and hyperpigmentation. like this will work on all of those things. So I'm gonna do on one side with a powder puff and on the other side with a brush, just so that you know exactly how you can do it. So you wanna get your powder puff. The best one I personally think is the Laura Mercier powder puff. What I'm gonna do is press into this powder like this. Now it is really important that you actually do kind of swirl it around in the palm of your hand, just so it really gets the powder into the sponge. And then what we're gonna do is very lightly, we're gonna press. That's it. Now leave that there for a second. Right, let's move on to the brush one. You wanna get either a medium, like you can get a small brush. For example, you can use, you know, a Real Technique setting brush. It depends. You can go very small or you can go very big with your brush. I'll use a small one today. So now what you wanna do is basically press into this powder. Don't go straight in with a whole load of powder. You want to just kind of like really get that powder into the brush, but there's only a tiny bit of powder on here, not a lot. Get it into the brush so that when you do go on the back of your hand, there's not a whole load of powder. Then we're just going to press. Don't brush it, just press. There you go. That's all you're going to do there. Now the other side, we pressed it on. Now we're just going to very lightly dust that powder off. So those are the two different ways that you can actually set it. Now going forward, like you can use whatever you want to use on top. If you want to use bronzer, you want to use blush, whatever you want to use, that's fine. But just remember not to really press heavy and like go back and forth, because you're just going to take everything off. Personally, I would let this settle for at least 10 minutes before you move in with anything. But that is basically how you do this. I did want to very quickly let you know, because I forgot to mention, that I do have an online publication. So I am the editor of my own magazine. I know, pretty crazy, right? But it's called the Beauty Breakfast Club. It's somewhere that I would love to see you, because we're growing a beauty community over there and it's growing rapidly, and I want to see you there. It's basically everything to do with beauty. There's a newsletter every other day. It's consistent. Sometimes I even put in extras. It's about everything, life, culture, mainly beauty. Everything's written by me, and then the odd time we'll have guest writers, which I'm excited to introduce soon. But there are two versions of it. So you've got a free version, which gives you access to the occasional like newsletter. You get it either sent to your email, you can just go on. It's basically an online magazine. You can just go online and it's there. Just type in thebeautybreakfastclub.com and it's going to take you there. Or you've got the other option, which is paid, and basically that's the equivalent of getting yourself a coffee a month. It gives you early access to stuff. You've got a chat room with me, the whole community. We're chatting all the time on there, so it's really fun, and I love to see you there, and we're all asking each other's questions. I've actually got some of the community, which could be you, to actually be part of some of my newsletters and some of the articles that I'm writing. Like, I'm actually talking to you guys, and yeah, I'd love to see you there. So don't forget to join that. And I've got everything listed in my description. All the discount codes are there. Make sure you check that, because you don't want to miss out on a cheeky discount. And yeah, hopefully this has shown you exactly how you can cover up dark circles. If you have any questions, let me know. If there's anything else you want to see in terms of like problem solving, then let me know. Drop a comment, because I always read them, and let me know, because I'd love to kind of like answer or give you a solution to that problem. So other than that, guys, I'm going to see you on the next video.